Shalom. Welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast and TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I am your host, Rabbi Richard Adris. We thank you for your time and for the giving and joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to make a comment or suggestion about the show or ideas for Seekers of Meaning, please feel free to contact me at rabbiadress@jewishsacredaging.com. That's the website, jewishsacredaging.com. And feel free to visit us on the Jewish Sacred Aging Facebook page as we try to tackle the wonderful world of social media. One of the wonderful worlds that many of us in our demographic are now living in is this wonderful club of grandparenting and the excitement of that. And I'll spare you about 4 or 5 days extolling our grandchildren, but get right to our guests who are going to bring us up to date on a very, very exciting project called the Jewish Grandparents Network. And we want to welcome David Raphael, the co-founder and chief executive officer of the network, and Jane Shapiro, the co-founder of OROT, the Center for New Jewish Learning, a Covenant Award winner. And we welcome both of you, David and Jane, to Seekers of Meaning. And we thank you for your time. How are you? I hope both of you are well and safe in various parts of the country.
Yes. Happy to be here.
It's good to see you, David, again. And Jane, nice to meet you long distance through the Zoom or the whatever this machine is. Everybody in our little boxes. The Jewish Grandparents Network. Some people may not be familiar with this. So let me ask you, David, just give me a brief overview of when did this start? What's the ultimate goal of the Jewish Grandparents Network and the website? So people who may not be familiar with this can jump right on it.
The Jewish Grandparents Network was established 6 years ago, about the same time my granddaughter was born. I became a Zaidi. I became a Zaidi because my wife wanted to be a Bubby. So I became a Zaidi. And the goal was to engage, recognize, and support grandparents as essential members of today's changing Jewish families, as essential conveyors of Jewish life, traditions, values, and customs, and at the same time, folks who play critical roles in supporting families as they kind of make their way from day to day. So we were founded on the notion or the recognition that the Jewish community at large wasn't attending or wasn't aware or wasn't supporting grandparents in the central role that they play in our families, and especially at a time when Jewish family life is changing so dramatically.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, and this emerged in a series of conversations, really trying to analyze the shifts in the Jewish community post October 7th. And the question of who really can be the transmitters of Jewish tradition. And of course, the logical answer, the quick answer is, well, it's the parents, and we have to energize parents. But having done a little bit of work with the network and the survey of the grandparents survey, it appears to me, or I want your opinion on this, that the baby boom generation, of which at least I am a member of, has really re-energized the concept of being a very activist grandparent. And in the shift of the demographics of the American Jewish family, which are huge, that it is the grandparents' generation who may, at this particular period of time, especially post-October 7th, be the prime transmitters of Jewish tradition and values in Jewish families, more so even than their parents' generation. And I'd like your comment on that. Jane, take it away.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. And I think framing all of the questions about identity and community and what it means to be a Jew moving forward, October 7th was a significant date. I often like to think that our generation, we almost snuck out of this world, almost, as the first generation in history to have been post-Holocaust state of Israel, maybe, like living in a time when Jews lived with a lot of comfort and a lot of ability to move into society with a tremendous amount of freedom and could also cultivate a lot of pride. And now the event of October 7th, I think, has caught us up straight where we have to go like, oh, we're not going to get out of here with confronting some of the really difficult negative challenges. And I think one of the responses to that right now that I see in my community going on is a doubling down on the joys of Jewish, what does it mean to be part of a Jewish community, and the amazing values and just how significant it is to be a Jew and Jewish pride. And I think because we lived at a time when we remember 1967 or certain just kind of a freedom that we are positioned to teach a tremendous amount to our children or grandchildren about the positive aspects of Judaism, because what they might, if they might now come away with an overwhelming amount of perhaps social media created negativity about Judaism. And we have the perspective as grandparents to say, it has not always been like this. There have been times in America where we have felt comfortable as Jews, welcome as Jews, we had access, and there have been times when celebrating Judaism has been easier. Let me help you do that. Let me remind you, I can tell my stories of my childhood, and I can celebrate with you.
Yeah, the stories, I think, as you pointed out, are really, really crucial, because a lot of these grandchildren now are growing up being bombarded with news media stories about anti-Semitism, what has happened on college campuses in the last couple of months. So this is why I wanted to raise this issue, because it goes to another question, another issue that I want to raise. But before I do, David, just again, give me the website in case people want to check up on that website. And real fast, what's the website for people who want to learn more about the network?
I'll share that with you, but I also want to follow up to Jane's lovely answer. So our website is jewishgrandparentsnetwork.org, and my email is david@jewishgrandparentsnetwork.org, and we're delighted to talk with anybody who might be interested. The website has about, I would say at this point, about 150 different resources for grandparents and grandkids, ranging from how to celebrate holidays to take it sacred aging, how to communicate, how to share family stories. We're just this week are posting a brand new section of the website called the Be Mitzvah Initiative, which meant for both families and for communities to elevate grandparents' roles in the Be Mitzvah experience beyond coming up and being called to the Torah and sitting down afterwards. And so we continue to build on our content. We're now developing new content around becoming a grandparent. There's no rituals in Jewish life for becoming a grandparent, so we're creating them. So there's enormous resources, both for families and the communities and professionals that seek to serve them. We also have wonderful monthly webinars, and all of those are recorded on our website. You know, I was reminded, Jane, when you were talking of Marshall Duke's phrase, an intergenerational sense of self, that Marshall teaches us through his research that children who know their family stories are more emotional resilient. And this is a time when, as a community, we need to be emotionally resilient. And that intergenerational sense of self can elevate our family's capacity to really make our way through this complicated time. So we have grandparents in our community who still remember the Holocaust. We have grandparents in our community whose early days, like me, were filled with the miracle of Israel. And that sense of passion for Israel comes with us wherever we go. I love a phrase by Mark Oppenheimer, who said that Jews are the longest running book club in the world. That is, our passion for our Jewish books is something that we could be proud of, and our Jewish wisdom we could be proud of, and that's something that we could share with our grandkids at a complicated time.
Yeah. Again, the stories idea. Just run me through real fast. The Be Mitzvah. I think you said, David, resources being put on the web to elevate the role of the grandparent as we approach these ceremonies. what exactly can you walk me through some of what those resources may
Sure.
be?
Well, I'll give you one specific research. So one specific, I'll give you one specific resource. So, as anybody who has experienced B mitzvah these days, it's not a one-day event. It begins 6 to 8 months beforehand, and
You're
through the
lucky.
learning, whatever. And so, what do we think about the grandparents' role or the family's role during that period when the B mitzvah kid is beginning to prepare for his or her bar mitzvah? Bat mitzvah? We created something called the Talis Project that uses talis making as an opportunity to engage all the members of the family more inclusively in the broader B mitzvah experience. So, it's if a family chooses, for instance, to make a talis together, which we provide very specific guidelines on how to do that, all of the members of the family can do that. If they have 4 Jewish grandparents, each grandparent could participate in tying one of the tzitzit. They could help design. There's no real, other than the tzitzit, the cloth could be anything. So one could imagine that if you have grandparents who are Scottish, they could make a talit made out of tartan plaid. I'm not saying that would be something they want to do, but in other words, the Talit Project is a metaphor for creating opportunities for broader members of the family to be engaged in this liminal moment. Because it's a liminal moment not just for the B mitzvah kid, it's for the whole family. Oh my God, my grandson is a bar mitzvah kid. And Jane could talk about that. That's an incredibly important moment in the lives of family.
Yeah, Jane, do you want to add anything?
Oh, David is saying that because my oldest grandson had a bar mitzvah this summer, so he heard me.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. He heard me talking about the event and just how it felt to sit in a different seat. When you move into another seat in terms of your family, how emotional it can be, and the opportunities to tell stories about when your grandpa had his bar mitzvah, when I had my bat mitzvah, and so. The sensitivity David is always bringing to this work, which I so much admire, is where's the opportunity? Where things that we take for granted, there's an opportunity here for connection, for education, for building resilience and care. That those are very different things than saying I became a grandchild and I'm playing with my grandchild. When your eyes, I think, are really opened to how much depth and potential there is in all the facets of the relationship, that it's always our hope. And that's why I'm so happy to be an educator involved with this, because educators are always looking for opportunities for development to help people move along in life in quality ways, in inspiring ways. And so there's all these amazing, magical, extraordinary sacred moments in the journey from the time you hear that your child's going to become a parent to moving along as that child reaches bar mitzvah age or adulthood. And there are opportunities to grow ourselves. And also that our practice as grandparents helps children grow. So there's enormous developmental potential in all the aspects of grandparenting that people don't think about. They think about the happy parts or the challenging parts sometimes, but I feel like our mission is do you know how important this is? Do you realize that when you're sitting and playing that you're helping that child develop, or when you're telling a story? I have to share, we have one amazing woman who participates in the Grandparent Network. And when COVID happened, she said, everybody asks stories about the Spanish plague, Spanish flu. I bet there's Spanish flu stories in your families. And I have one. And we kind of thought, what's she talking about? She said, when you tell a child that my grandmother, your great-great-grandmother went through a plague and she came out okay, and here you are, you will be okay too. And so that kind of the awareness of what is in your hands all the time as a grandparent is rich. So, and the website is full of all kinds of ways to access, and the classes that we offer. There are lots of ways for grandparents to grow their practice as grandparents, develop their skills and develop their kind of grandparenting muscles so they can capitalize on significant moments. A bar mitzvah or b mitzvah is a standout, but there are all kinds of weekly, daily, all kinds of moments when, with an awareness of the potential of what could happen, if you can mindfully grandparent at a whole nother level that may have never occurred to you before. So we're always looking for that. So
Yeah, no, thank you, because you in some of the grandparenting workshops we do as part of our work at Jewish Sacred Aging, this awareness a lot of times come up. Somebody will be talking about relating something in their own family, and invariably they'll say something, I never realized the depths of what this means, what this relationship means, and I treasure this relationship and the time more than any other moments in my life, because I realize, first of all, it's hard to escape the reality of our own mortality. And so the time spent, if you're lucky enough to have that opportunity, and that's another story, becomes even more precious. And especially in this times of utter chaos, when we're looking for sanity or some grounding, spending time with those grandkids can be the most grounding, satisfying experience. It puts a lot of things in perspective. So this is, and both of you allude to this, this is sacred work in the real sense. I think even more than we ever realize until we join the club, how sacred this is. So talk to me a little bit about how the two of you and the network reinforces this idea of what I think you alluded to in one of our pre-conversations, what you would call sacred grandparenting. What is that?
So I'll respond to that in two ways. So when we talk about sacred or use the term kadosh, we sometimes think of a time or a place of being kadosh. And I keep on going back to what our forefather Jacob said, that God is in this place and I didn't recognize it. I didn't know it. And so we start out by recognizing the sacredness of this opportunity. And again, anybody, I love that, your quote, Richard, anybody who's gotten that phone call and says, this is a boy, this is a girl, that's a profoundly sacred moment, a holy moment, a moment of wonder. But so is when you're sitting in the car with your child and you're schmoozing, or when you're, whatever it is, each one of those moments is sacred. But we have to honor that sacredness by sanctifying it. And what does that mean to sanctify all of those moments, whether it's the bar mitzvah, whether it's the birth, whether you're schlepping your grandkid to a soccer game? And that is, we have a responsibility, first of all, to honor that moment or recognize the sanctity. But something I've learned that Jane and I talk a lot about is, how do we elevate that responsibility? How do we elevate that relationship? And we've been spending a lot of time thinking about what it means to be a great grandparent. I don't mean somebody who has great grandchildren, but somebody who could actively elevate their grandparenting muscle. We did a 5-part learning series on mindful or conscious grandparenting, where we learn tools about what it means to be in the moment and elevate that relationship. And finally, I'd say that part of this, two other parts of this sacred responsibility, is a sacred Jewish responsibility that we have to our heritage, to our past, and to our future, to our traditions. And it's also there's a kind of a sacred responsibility we have to our adult children. That how do we honor them in their roles? How do we provide them with the tzimtzum, with the space they need to be parents, to do this, to raise their children in their own way? Jane tells the wonderful story of Ruth and Naomi, when Ruth took the baby to her breast and said, "This baby is mine." Well, that's not something we want to do, don't encourage. So I think there are multiple levels to this, but I think it begins by creating a kind of a sense of wonder in every element of this relationship. I mean, so I was with my granddaughter who's in first grade at Solomon Schechter School, and I helped her do her Hebrew homework. She's reading Hebrew. She's 6 years old. It was like, this is extraordinary. And part of my responsibility was to share that Jewish learning with her and be there and validate, not just validate it, but elevate it. That this is so great, Bina. Whether her name is Bina, a whole another level of wonderful. So that's kind of that's where it begins, recognizing the sacredness and then owning and being true to that sacredness.
Wait until you sit down with her about a year from now and try to help her with her math homework, as I tried to do with my granddaughter about 5 years ago. And I made she turned and I said, "Well, the answer is this." And Ayla turned around to me and said, "No, Pop," says, "You did that all wrong." And I flunked second grade math with my grade to this day. Okay, she's at high school. She laughs hysterically. He said, "Oh yeah, Pop flunked math in second grade," which is true because it's a whole different world than I'm used to.
Having said that, that was another profoundly sacred moment when she becomes. This is a chavruta opportunity, grandparenting, and when our grandkids become our teachers, that elevates their relationship. It's a two-way deal.
Oh no! Listen, I'm now familiar with the entire over of Taylor Swift thanks to my granddaughter. Whether I like it or not, Jane. So how do you define this sacred grandparenting thing as an educator?
Yeah, I'm going to say a little bit of what David said. I think that if somebody said what makes the grandparent relationship special, it is our relationship to time. We have, unlike in the way in which we're differentiated from parents never have enough time. Our relationship with time is, number one, we can say to that child, there is nothing more important in this moment than you. And I'm going to, what you call present moment for mindfulness. You are the most important thing in this moment. And I think that is the thing that makes grandchildren feel like, oh, my grandparents I'm special to them, as special to me, is that we convey to them that our work, anything else that's going on in the world there's nothing else important but them. I think that's one feature. Also, because we have a short span of time, we are aware of a shortened span with them. And so we want to make good on that time as much as we can. And then the third piece, and I think this is an educational piece that I love. I didn't coin this expression, but I love it. Jane, I say, we embody, David referred to this, we in our bodies span 5-generation wingspan. If you can tell a story of your grandparent, you're already reaching back into the 19th century, maybe, or a great grandparent. And as you reach forward and look into these children, and might think about them and their children. You might influence into the 21st century as you speak to them. And so they might say, here's a story that I heard from my grandparents. You can span forward. And so we can represent enormous history and connect it to the future in some way. So again, that's where thinking about your family stories means so much, is being able to find those stories that are old, but really both build resilience and connect that child to something that they will never know. I guess the example I like to give is, I grew up in Chicago and my grandchildren live in Chicago. And I was telling my grandchildren about how my mother used to take the streetcar to her cello lesson. And they don't know what a streetcar is unless we go to a museum. But it's just in that brief moment, that child who never knew my mother somehow can go back, can time travel over 100 years. And those are educative moments for us as grandparents. I do want to add one other piece because you asked me as an educator, I think about this. It also allows us an opportunity, development in our life to grow in profound ways, most specifically in our relationship with our adult children. As they parent, if we have a stance of curiosity and support and love and connection to the parents of these children, we get to revisit a relationship with our children who we may have lost touch with them when they were teenagers or young adults. And so there's a sacred moment in that also. Many people, when they become parents, suddenly go like, oh my God, this is what my parents did for me.
Right.
And when you interview a lot of grandparents, they remember their own grandparents. So there's also a resifting of family relationships when people are in the role of, I'm a parent now, I have to transmit. Oh my gosh, who's going to help me do that? And they begin to think about the people who did that for them. And so those are educational moments, being open to the possibilities of connection. That I believe that grandparents it's the right seat from which to generate that kind of expression and culture in a family, because parents are too busy. They're too busy, but we can build a culture of openness. And like, I'm really curious, daughter-in-law, what were your childhood traditions growing up? I know what ours were, but what are yours like? Or where did your parents come from? We can generate a lot of curiosity and connection in the families, more than anybody else in the family. We can play that role. So.
Yeah, the sacredness, one of those moments, and until you live it, I think it's too abstract. But when you watch your own children become parents, that is really a Shehechianu moment when you sit there and say, oh my God, look, we must have, we did something right. Look what's happening, and how they may be doing it differently. That's okay. But, it's an amazingly, holy moment. It's a very, 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 it is what we call a Shehechianu moment. But before we start running out of time, could you have your family in Chicago, David, is in
My family's in
Atlanta.
Baltimore.
So
my kids and grandkids are in Baltimore.
let me ask you, how does the network assist those individuals whose grandchildren are hours and hours away, that they don't live? I can go pick up my granddaughter tonight at school and just drive her home just so I can spend 10 minutes with her. But to see those grandchildren may be a commitment of time and money and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this follow up to that is how, because the survey pointed this out, are there resources on the website dealing with this phenomenon and growth of being a grandparent for an interfaith couple and interfaith grandchildren? Could you just speak to those, the long distance and the interfaith, before we run out of time? It's very, very, very important.
Yeah. Three answers, maybe more. There are resources on the website. We have something on the in our website called the Family Room, which is about 120 resources for grandparents and grandkids that they could use remotely. That was created at the beginning of the COVID period. Now, one of the things, by the way, we know is that before COVID, almost no grandparents used any kind of visual media to connect with their grandkids, either Zoom or FaceTime, and now about 80% of them do. So we do have resources on our website that specifically provide opportunities virtually to connect with your grandkids. We had a webinar just this past week on tools, resources, and ideas for grandparents to connect with their grandkids who are far away, and that will be uploaded on our website very, very soon. One of the easy things that grandparents can do, that I do every time I travel somewhere, I send postcards to my grandkids. And my grandson is 2. He doesn't know what he's looking at, but kids love getting things. So and it doesn't have to be a new train set. It could be a card. It could be a postcard. We have actually posts in our family how to maximize FaceTime or Zoom. In other words, how do you somehow create better connections with Zoom? So we do have a lot of resources to that. One of the things that we ask people to think about is that if you're seeing your grandkids in your home, let's say 2 months a year or a month a year, how you making that time magic? My daughters used to go to my in-laws' house for about 2 weeks every year, and it was a magical place. And so, how do we make sure that our spaces and our times are magical? In terms of interfaith families, the first thing I want to say our organization believes is that the Jewish community we have to move beyond seeing this as either a failure or an unsatisfactory outcome. I did everything I could. I went to day school, and still they intermarried. That's not going to help us survive Jewishly as we go into the 21st and 21st century. And I think the most recent Pew studies show that some very significant of kids being raised in multi-faith families are being raised Jewish. So we do have resources on our website, specifically how our non-Jewish partners can be involved in our Jewish traditions. There's some wonderful resources by Jonathan Schmidt Chapman on how to make what's called holiday discovery kits, how to make them come alive. We've had webinars on how to welcome our non-Jewish families into our community. One of the things Jane and I are working on is a 5-part learning series for non-Jewish grandparents, not to teach them how to light a Hanukkah menorah, but to help share our traditions in meaningful ways. So we believe very strongly, and I think our content and resources share that we need to be profoundly welcoming and engaging to all members of our family. It also means when we talk about the roles of our adult children, to be especially sensitive to the roles of the non-Jewish parent, and to make sure whatever happens, they feel comfortable and welcome. And to recognize that, everything is not always going to come the way we'd like it to be. On our Facebook group, we had a grandparent who posted that her non-Jewish daughter-in-law wanted their new grandson to be baptized.
Right.
And they said, the question went out, should I go? And everybody said, you must go and maintain this relationship with your family. So we do have a lot of resources, and it is a central issue for our work.
Thank you. Jane, did you want to add anything before
I would say that what I said earlier about developing curiosity and being willing to ask is that this is a skill of listening and practicing. I think that works especially when you can say to the non-Jewish grandparents of your grandchild, tell me about your childhood. What can I know about you? And that's not, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. It's just a stance of curiosity is open and welcoming in and of itself. I'm really wondering, what was it like to grow up on a farm in rural Ohio? What was, and listening for the opportunities where the common human experiences come together, because we also can build our families around those stories and those shared values and experiences. And just really, we developed a couple of really lovely protocols and activities for people to do to interview their in-law child, to interview them in a way to get to know them better. Like, I don't know how often people are like, my son-in-law, he's busy working, he's doing that. I don't really know a lot about him. Could I make a date to get to know him better? We can do that. And I think that it's in those kinds of sincere moments of curiosity and connection that we can build family relationships that transcend, the origins of the families. I think we have to try. We don't have. That's also sacred. Building bridges is sacred work. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing very, very, very quickly. My son-in-law is a Jew by choice. His family came over in the Mayflower. My family came over in steerage. So I want to know about his life, and I want my grandkids to know about his life and his experiences, because that enriches who they are.
Yeah, and I really want to thank you for this. The idea of the holiness of the story really transcends generations, time, and allows this relationship to really become, as you call it, sacred. So, David and Jane, thank you very, very, very much. Continued good luck and success with the network, JewishGrandparentsNetwork.org. If you haven't checked out that website and you're a grandparent, it's probably worthwhile to click on it and discover the huge amount, as you've heard a little bit about, resources and opportunities for growth and connection with like-minded people. JewishGrandparentsNetwork.org. David, Jane, thank you very, very much. Continue to stay healthy. That's the most important thing, and have fun with those grandchildren. And watch out, David, for that math problem. It's beyond belief.
Yeah.
To all of you, thank you very, very much for your time and joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to help support our work, please go to the website, JewishSacredAging.com. Click on the conveniently located donate button and just follow the prompts. And if you'd like to become a sponsor of a series of these podcasts, get your word around the world, please let me know. Just write me at rabbiaddress@JewishSacredAging.com. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubeck and Media Companies in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to our expert producer, Steve Lubetkin. Again, thank you for joining us. Until next time, I am your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Take care of yourself. Be kind to one another. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Shalom.